Yeah.
I understand the laws were different years ago, but nowadays you're supposed to come here illegally. Now my concern is, when you come here illegally, you're breaking a law. And what I am seeing is, America is saying that's okay. But by not punishing them for breaking that law, they continue to break other laws. They get illegal green cards, they get illegal licenses. They work under the table, but they don't file income taxes like we do. The list goes on and on. They continue to break the law. Now those of us who are here, I'm an immigrant who had to come here legally, who has to abide by the law. Where does it put me? I have to pay income taxes. I have to get a legal green card. I have to get a legal license. I have to work above the table. I have to contribute to Social Security even though I don't agree with it.
Well, two things. I mean, I think we should talk a little bit about immigrants and the economy and the issue of immigrants paying taxes and what happens when immigrants work, because that's a whole big part of my book. But let me just separate out from that the issue about the law, which is that what I was sort of trying to get at in that chapter is that the law doesn't treat people equally. The law discriminates. And the law in the United States has always discriminated, and groups of people have always fought to change the laws that have discriminated against groups of people, denying them the rights that are available to other people. If the law says you can't take the jigsaw puzzle piece off that table, and the law applies to all of us equally, then any one of us who takes one of those pieces is going to get prosecuted. If the law says, well, everybody who's under 5 feet or everybody who has blue eyes is prohibited from taking a piece off that table, or everybody who's born in Connecticut, or everybody who has skin darker than a paper bag, or everybody who, if the law discriminates and says it's perfectly fine for you to take a piece but not you, those are the laws that people in the United States have throughout our history struggled to have changed and say, no, really, we should be equal before the law. If it's illegal for you, it's illegal for you. And that's where immigration law is, I think, like all of the other things you're talking about would be illegal no matter who does them. Immigrating, crossing a border, being here is illegal for some people but legal for others. The very same act is legal for some people and illegal for other people. And that's what makes the law discriminatory. About jobs, let me just say something about working. Most people in the United States who work in what we call the formal economy. That is over the table as opposed to under the table. You get paid with a payroll check out of which taxes are deducted. Federal and state income taxes are deducted, Social Security is deducted. That's true whether you're a citizen, whether you're a documented immigrant, whether you're an undocumented immigrant. If you work in the formal economy, those taxes are deducted from your paycheck. The difference is, if you're an undocumented immigrant, you're paying into the system, but you never get anything back from the system. That is, you pay into Social Security with every paycheck, but you'll never get to collect Social Security. So undocumented immigrants who work over the table are really contributing way more than their share to the system. In fact, they're subsidizing the Social Security system to the tune of about $7 billion a year that undocumented immigrants are paying into Social Security that they'll never be able to claim.
How can they work over the table if they're...
They give a false Social Security number.
Well, that's
I've done
illegal.
taxes I've done taxes in New York.
That's what she's saying. She's compounding the
Yeah,
illegal.
the thing that they do that's illegal actually exploits only themselves. That is, it means that they're paying more than they'll ever get back. So if somebody, people who work under the table in the informal economy, that is, any transaction that happens in the informal economy tends not to be taxed. If you buy some dishes at a garage sale, if your son or daughter works as a babysitter, any economic transaction that goes on in the informal economy is not taxed. And that's also true regardless of citizenship status. If you're an undocumented immigrant who shovels somebody's driveway, or if you're a citizen who shovels somebody's driveway, you're probably not going to get workers' compensation and Social Security and unemployment and all those things deducted when your neighbor gives you $10 for shoveling the driveway. Maybe it's 20 now. So what distinguishes whether economic transactions are taxed or not has nothing to do with citizenship or documentation status. It has to do with whether you're working in the formal economy or in the informal economy. Immigrants who work, or citizens who work in the informal economy, still pay lots of taxes, because if you rent or own a home, you pay property taxes. If you ever purchase anything, you pay sales taxes. If you drive a car, you pay vehicle taxes and gasoline taxes. And so everybody, regardless of citizenship and regardless of employment status, pays taxes. But the specific payroll taxes are only paid when you're working in the formal economy, again, totally regardless of citizenship or immigration status.
Do we know what the makeup is of the informal economy? Or is it mostly immigrant? Is it very large?
Immigrants are overrepresented in the informal economy. And that works, again, has benefits and detriments for different people in different ways. It certainly works to the detriment of the immigrants, the people or whoever is working in the informal economy. If you work in the informal economy, you get injured on the job, sorry. Try to form a union, sorry. Or you're laid off, sorry. That is, you don't have any of the workers' rights that people who work in the formal economy have. You don't have vacations, you don't have a pension, you don't have a health plan, you don't have anything if you work in the informal economy. So certainly, you know, if it's the 13-year-old who's babysitting once a week, maybe that doesn't work so much to that person's detriment, because they get those things from another place. But for somebody who's trying to support family working in the informal economy, it's very, very difficult. Immigrants are overrepresented in those jobs because those jobs are the most exploitative jobs. So people who don't have rights, who are more scared, who are more exploitable, are more likely to work under those more exploitative conditions. And employers are more likely to look for them because the employer is also breaking the law by paying people under the table. Once again, when you pay the kid down the street or have a garage sale, you are actually breaking the law, but most of us don't worry about that so much, and most of us aren't prosecuted when we do it. I bet all of us have done something like that at some point during our lives. So the employers are really the ones who are profiting off of the informal economy because they get to pay less than minimum wage, they get to not pay their payroll taxes, and they get the benefit of workers who are terrified.
How would you like to see the immigration law revised to address some of the problems you have stated?
I mean, I think the problems that we're looking at, some of them stem from the law, and many of them stem from other aspects of the way our society and economy function, and they're intertwined, the way the law works and the way other parts of our economy, both domestically and globally, work. So I don't think that changing immigration law can eliminate some of the worst discrimination that's going on against immigrants. It can't either stop or increase immigration. What's going to slow immigration or make immigration more rapid is going to be changes in global economic relationships. What increases immigration is what I was sort of reading to you about in my piece, is basically people being dispossessed from traditional lifestyles and being turned into non-productive people who cannot survive in the home society because the home society is geared toward an export economy that satisfies the needs of those outside the country. And as long as that is going on, people are going to emigrate from those countries. And current economic policies like the free trade agreements exacerbate that situation. So if we really want to slow immigration, and I would say I want to slow immigration not because I think immigration in and of itself is good or bad, but because immigration is a symptom of human suffering. So I want to slow immigration because I want to slow human suffering, and the way to do that is to change the imposition of US economic policies on other countries change the way the free trade agreements are designed, for example, to make survival more possible in places like rural Colombia,
But
instead of making it less possible
You
for
had said
people.
there's a quota system now based on the population of a country. Would you
Yeah.
like to see that revised? You think that's unfair?
Yes, I think it's unfair, but as I
So
said, I
should it
don't
be by
think that
population?
I don't think that the immigration laws themselves
Well-
play a very big role in how much immigration there is. Other things play a much bigger role. So if your concern is just the law, I
It
think
is
the
the
law
law,
should
because
treat people equally.
So-
If your concern is immigration, then we need to talk about how do we create a more just world in which people are not forced to leave their homes and families and loved ones and ancestors and cemeteries to come to a place where they don't know anybody and they're going to be exploited.
So you really feel the problem isn't here, it's elsewhere?
I feel it's interrelated. That is,
Well-
what's happening to the economies in Latin America is decided in Washington.
Well, how about Mexican oil reserves that are owned by Mexico, that are in the United States banks? Why can't that money be used to improve the welfare of the Mexicans?
Well, certainly,
It's not just the United States, come on, there's a lot of exploitation on the part of a lot of other parties.
well, yes and no. I mean, no, it's not just the United States, but what we can change is what the United States is doing, and that has played a huge role, an overwhelming role in how Latin American economies have developed in the past 100, 150
Right,
years.
but right now,
It's
let's talk-
certainly the major factor.
Right now, it's the major factor, you think?
Well, I mean, you know, in Mexico, the United States has been deeply involved since the early 19th century, for
No, but
example.
I'm saying now, what could be changed there?
Now, what could be changed? I'd start with the free trade agreements. That's where I'd
Yeah,
start.
so you're against the free trade agreements,
Yes, in their current form, yeah.
and you think that's the way to move.
And, you know, clearly the signing of NAFTA led to a huge increase
I
in
agree.
Mexican immigration to the U.S. because of the suffering that it caused in
Well,
Mexico.
now this suffering though, as Barbara Anderson has pointed out in an article on this issue in the Salem News, there are other nations where the suffering is much greater than
Mhm.
those countries in which we are having from which we're having a large amount of immigration. Would you suggest that you take a position to try to equalize the movement from the really, really deprived and the really exploited, rather than
Again,
those
I
that are
don't
less
think
exploited?
that trying to restrict immigration by law is the way to go.
So
I
there should
think-
be no restrictions.
I don't think that that's relevant, that makes much of a difference to the size of immigration. And I think if you look at the size of immigration in this country, you see how little relevance the current law has to the size of immigration. I think these
Legal immigration?
economic factors are what cause immigration. And if we want to talk about changing immigration, we have to talk about economic factors.